Hi, my name is Mr. John M. Torres and I will discuss how did we construct our simple sign up and login window. It starts by defining a function login account and username is equals to username entry dot get open and close parentheses. Password is equals to password entry dot get open and close parentheses dot encode UTF-8. The program will accept an entry from the user to be his username. And the program will also accept entries from the user to set up his password with encode UTF-8. UTF-8 encoding is a character encoding that represents each Unicode character with 1 to 4 bytes, retrieves the current value entered into the password entry widget. In simple terms, it is used to provide a better security for the password. Next is if not, username and password. Message box that show error, login error. Please enter both username and password. Return. This line checks whether both the username and password variables contain non-empty values. The AND operator here ensures that both conditions need to be true for the entire expression to be true. Either the username or password are empty. In this case, it displays an error message using a message box dialog, informing the user to enter both a username and a password. After displaying the error message, the return statement is used to exit the function early. This ensures that the login process does not proceed further if the user has not entered the username and a password. Next is this line. Con is equals to sqlite3.connect users.db. Cursor is equals to con.cursor. Cursor.execute select from users where email is equals to question mark username. User is equals to cursor.fetch1 con.close. This part of the code establishes a connection to an SQLite database file named users.db. If the line does not exist, SQLite will create it automatically. The con object represents the connection to the database. Cursor is equals to con.cursor open and close parentheses. This line creates a cursor object using the connection object. Cursor.execute select from users where email is equals to question mark username. This line executes an SQL select query to retrieve all columns from the users tables where the email column matches the value of username. The question mark is a placeholder for the parameterized query to prevent SQL injection, and username is a tuple containing the username value to be substituted into the query. User is equals to cursor fetch1. This line fetches the first row of the result set from the executed query. If a user with the given email exists, user will contain a tuple representing the user's data. If no users is found, user will be none. Con.close, this is the line that closes the connection to the database. Next, if user and bcrypt.check pw password user index 2. User, this is the variable that holds the result of the query cursor.fetch1. If a user with the given email exists, user will be a tuple containing the user's data. If no user is found, user will be none. bcrypt.check pw password user index 2. This function checks if the provided password encoded as UTF-8 byte string matches the hash password stored in the database. Password is the user provided password which have been encoded 2 bytes earlier. User index 2 refers to the password field in the user's data tuple. The condition checks if user is not none, and if the provided password matches the stored hash password. Message box that show info login successful. If the condition is true, a message box is displayed to inform the user that the login was successful. Message box that show info is a method from Tkinter that shows an informational message box with the title login and the message login successful. Else, if the condition is false, it will display error, invalid username or password. App destroy, open and close parentheses. This line closes the current custom Tkinter application window. This is typically done after a successful login to transition from the login window to the main application window. Open main window, open and close parentheses. This function opens the main application window. After the login window is closed, the function is called to initialize and display the main part of the application. Next, we define the function create account. Email is equals to username entry dot get open and close parentheses. This line gets the email input from a user interface and will store the value from the email keyword. Next, password is equals to password entry dot get open and close parentheses and code UTF-8. This line gets the password input from another entry field and encodes it to UTF-8, converting the string into bytes. Hash is equals to bcrypt.hashpw. Just like earlier, this part of the code uses bcrypt library to hash the password for security. Con is equals to sqlite3.connect users.db. This line connects to a SQLite database named users.db. Cursor is equals to con.cursor. This line creates a cursor object which is used to execute SQL commands. Cursor.execute select from users where email is equals to email. This line executes a SQL query to check if there's already a user with the same email in the users table. If cursor.fetch1. This line fetches one result from the query. If a result is found, it means an account with that already exists. And it will display using message box that show error that sign up error, invalid email or password. Else, if no account with that email is found, cursor.execute insert into user's email password values email hash. This line will insert a new row into the user's table with the provided email and hash password. Concommit, this line will commit the transaction, saving the new user to the database. And con.close, this line closes the database connection. And message box that show info will display a message that success, account created successfully, please log in. Username entry .delete 0 and this line clears the email entry field. And same goes to password entry, it will clear the password entry field. Now let's move on to this part of the code. App is equals to custom tkinter.ctk. This line creates the main application window using custom Tkinter, which is the enhanced version of Tkinter. App.title sign up or login. This will set the title of the window to sign up or login. App.geometry 450 by 360 pixels. This will set the dimension of the window to 450 pixels in width and 360 pixels in height. App.config.bg is equals to none. This configures the background color of the window. The none value typically means that the default background color will be used. App.resizable false. This line disables the ability to resize the window both horizontally and vertically. The false values indicate that resizing is not allowed in either direction. These are the lines for the font management. We define a font using the calibrate typeface with the size of 25, 17, 13, and 13. Con is equals to SQLite tree.connectData.db. This line connects to a SQLite database named data.db. If the database does not exist, it will be created. Cursor is equals to con cursor open and close parentheses. This line creates a cursor object which is used to execute SQL commands. Cursor.execute. This block creates a table named users if does not already exist. The table has two columns, username and password, both of which are text and cannot be null. Next, we define a function called signup. Username is equals to username entry.get. Password is equals to password entry.get. Just like the passcodes, we accept entry from the user and will put it to the variable username and password. If username is not equal to space and password is not equal to space, this line checks if both the username and password fields are not empty. If either field is empty, it triggers an error message box. Using message box.show error, enter all data. Cursor.execute select username from users where username is equals to question mark username. This line executes a SQL query to check if a user with the provided username already exists in the users table. If cursor.fetch1 is not none, this checks if any result is returned from the query, indicating that the username is already exists. And then, it displays a text using message box.show error, username already exists. Else, if the username does not exist, encoded password is equals to password.encode UTF-8, converting the string into bytes, and it will be hash using hash password is equals to bgrep.hashpw. This hashes the encoded password using bgrep with a generated salt. Cursor.execute insert into user's value username hash password. This inserts the new username and hash password into the user's table. Con.commit. This commits the transaction, saving the new user to the database. Messagebox.showInfo success account has been created. This displays the message that indicates that the account has been created. We define another login account function, but this is a bit different from the earlier login account. Username is equals to username entry2.get, password is equals to password entry2.get. This function starts by retrieving the entered username and password from the user interface fields. If username is not equal to space and password is not equal to space, this checks whether both the username and password fields are filled. If either is empty, it shows an error message, error, enter all data. Cursor.execute select password from users where username is equals to question mark username. This function executes a SQL query to fetch the password associated with the entered username from the users table in the database. If result, it checks if any result was returned from the database query. If no result is found, it means that the username does not exist and an error message is shown using messagebox.show error, invalid username. If bcrypt.checkpw password.encode UTF-8 result index 0. If the username exists, the function checks if the entered password matches the stored hash password using bcrypt.checkpw. The password.encode UTF-8 converts the password to bytes as required by bcrypt. If the passwords match, a success message is shown and the current application window is closed using app.destroy to open the main application window. And it displays a message using messagebox.show error, invalid password. Moving on in this login function. This function focuses on customizing the widgets that we needed in the login page. First, if frame1 in globals, frame1.destroy. That means it checks that if frame1 exists, it will call destroy or remove it from the application window. And next, the frame2 is declared as a global variable. Frame2 is equals to custom tikinter ctk frame app bg color is equals to hashtag 87cfeb. fg color is the same with the background color, width 470, height 360. This line is created with specific background, foreground, and dimensions with width and height. Next is login label 2 is equals to custom tikinter ctk label frame2 font is equals to font1, text is equals to login text color hashtag 000000 bg color 87cfeb. Login label 2 dot place x is equals to 200 and y is equals to 80. We use ctk label to display that the app title is login, and the label's font, text color, and background color are specified. The label is placed at coordinates 200 and 80. We declare them global variables to ensure that there will be no error caused by other functions. Username entry is equals to custom tikinter.ctk entry frame2, the font, text color, fg color, bg color, and border color. We also have border width, placeholder text, and placeholder text color, width, and height. This line is used to customize the username entry box by the specified color, border color, and the width and height. Same goes for the password entry and login button. In this line, we created a login button. It is created with the text login, the button's font, text color, and background color. The command parameter is set to login account, which means this function will be called when the button is clicked. The button is placed at the coordinates 170 and 250. Moving on this part of the code. Frame1 is created as a ctk frame with specific background and foreground colors, width and height, and position at coordinates x is equals to 0 and y is equals to 0. A sign up label with the text sign up is added to frame1 and position at x is equals to 200, y is equals to 20. Username and password entry are added to frame1 with placeholder text and position at 130, x is equals to 135 and y is equals to 90. The password is x is equals to 135 and y is equals to 160. Sign up button with the text sign up is added to frame1 along with a command to call the sign up function. When the button is clicked, it is positioned on x is equals to 180 and y is equals to 240. We also have here login label with the text already have an account is added to frame1 and positioned at x is equals to 170 and y is equals to 290. And a login button with the text login along with a command to call the login function. It is positioned on x is equals to 170 and y is equals to 320. Main loop open and close parenthesis. This starts the main event loop, which listens for events like button clicks and updates the GUI accordingly. and also ensures that the window will stay and also ensures that the window will not be closed.
It has two parts, the login portion, the login and sign up. Window, the earlier is the main window. This is the main window and the navigable information. So for the main window, it is not called. The main window starts in the open with the open window function. So the open window function is the function that make or which comprises the main window. The main window. So it would have a preview function, the play function, the display function, the view function, update function, and the search function. So and add preview function. So the add preview function starts with the EMR and the value of the database section. So this search EMR function is from the S3 database file that we have, which is the file for the database, or it connects the database and the code that we have here. This and so the S3 database starts with creating the table. It connects into the database and then it executes this code here. So this code here creates the table which does not exist. So it has 9 data equivalent to 9 columns, and then it connects it and then goes to it. And then we have the HTML function. The HTML function fetches the data that we have in the table into the fetches the data that we have in the table, and then as you can see here, it selects all from EMR. In EMR, it connects into the database and then selects all from the table that is in the database. So as you can see, all. And then we have the insert EMR table, or insert EMR function. The insert EMR function has the function of inserting data from the entry boxes that we have here, and then insert it into the table that we have here. And we're going to take it later. And then as well as we delete the EMR function. From the name itself, it deletes from the table that we have. Into here, connect, and then execute this code here. Delete from EMR, which is our table, and where ID is equal to question mark. The question mark is the placeholder for the ID, in which the ID is taken from the entry box that we have here. To be explained further later. And then the next close it. The update EMR function updates the data with the data taken from the entry boxes and updates the data that is selected in the preview. So the data here is updated, and the data that is selected from the preview is updated with the data input from the entry boxes. Data store here, I want to continue random or not. The data store change and then you have the ID exit function. The ID exit function basically it checks if the ID that is already, if the ID already exists in the table. So as you can see here, select count all from EMR, the ID is equal to the sum of ID taken from the entry box. As if you have noticed, everything checks or each function has a common code with it. It checks the ID, and why is that important? The ID is unshakable, so that the ID does summary. This means that the ID is not changeable, and it means that every ID is unique. You cannot have multiple data or multiple different versions of the data. So the ID is already taken. It will only have one name, one role, one gender, one civil status, one age, one date of birth, one address, and one email. So that's it. So let's go on into the code that we have here. And as explained earlier, we have the add the preview function, which adds the data into the preview or displays the data into the preview. Or it adds the data from table and presents it into the preview. For more that this function. And then we have the clear function. Basically the clear function clears everything that is input or everything that is input in the entry boxes that we have here. If we click new entry, the new entry has the command here. And then it's clear. This is because in the ID entry, so ID entry is the variable name that you have for the entry boxes. So if you have entry here in the variable name, this is connected to the entry boxes that you have. Delete here and you can see. Let's remove. Let's move on to the display data function. The display data function displays the data that you have. It takes the data from the entry boxes and presents it. The data from the preview. So the display data function takes the data from the preview and presents it in the entry boxes that we have here. So each time we select a data in the preview, the data in the entry boxes changes. And then we have the delete function. The delete function concerning itself deletes the data. In here we have an if and else statement. So let's start with the selected item variable first. So selected item is equal to tree selection, and tree selection is the selected data in the tree view. And then if not selected item, or if there is no selected item in the tree view, it will show an error. Please choose a patient data to delete. So if there is no data selected and then click the delete patient data, the error will present, or there will be an error. Else, or if there is a data selected in the tree view, it checks or it retrieves the data that we have here in the ID entry box and then returns that value into the delete function that we have here in the FB database code that we have changed. So if it returns value of, let's say, 1, 2, 3, 4, the command here would be, the command here would be changed from ID is equal to question mark and then to delete from EMR where ID is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4. And if that is executed or committed, the data with the ID of 1, 2, 3, 4 would be deleted in the database. And then we have the update function. The update function from the window itself, as I explained earlier, it updates the data that we have. The update function starts with just the same as the data, or just the same with the delete function. If there is no selected item, an error will appear and it will say select a patient update. Else, it will retrieve the data from the entry boxes that we have, these boxes, and then checks it here. It will connect into the update EMR function that we have here, and then return the data taken from the entry boxes and then substituted into this data from this placeholder. So the data taken from the entry boxes will be substituted into this code here and then updated, as you can see here. Update EMR set name. If before we have the name Sai and then we want to change it into Thomas, we use the update function for that. Next we have the insert function. Basically, the insert function is the add function. We want to add patient data. So it starts with getting the data from the entry boxes, and then here we have an else if else statement. So if not, ID and name and role and gender and marital status and name and age and DOB and home address and email, a message box will appear and saying that there is an error and we need to input all values, or we need all the fields to have values in them. So if there is one entry box here that has no entry, for example 1, 2, 3, 5, and then we need this age here, and we want to add the patient data, the error will appear. And then if we want to insert data but we accidentally have one with the same ID that is already in the database or in the tree view, for example we have this, and we have to add patient data, it will say the ID already exists. The next part here is the else function. So if there is an ID that is not identical and all the fields are with an input, it will return the data taken from the entry boxes into the FP database that we have here, the insert EMR function, and then substitute it into these placeholders. So insert into EMR, then substitute the values that we have taken from the entry boxes here, and then is committed and then close. So the data is inserted into the table that we have. Let's try that. So 5, we want to change this role into a student, and we want to make him married. So we will add this data, and then it will say success. Data has been inserted, and the data is inserted into the tree view, and if we check in the database that we have here, the data is inserted. Let's move on to the codes here are what we see in, or what we can see and interact with in the main window. The label, the entry boxes, the tree view, the button. These are these codes. So let's explain one. We have the ID label. From the name itself, it is the label, or what we can see here, the label beside the entry box. This is for the label. This means that it is designated for the main app, and it uses the font 1 family. And the text that this label has is ID color, and then the text color that it has is white because this is the hex code for white, and then it has a background color of this hex code. And the ID label that place is the placement for the label in the window. This is per pixel, and this is the x-axis and the y-axis. So this ID label is placed in the 20th pixel in the x-axis and in the 30th pixel in the y-axis. Next, we have the ID entry. So every variable name or variables that we have with entry here are for the entry boxes. The entry boxes are the boxes where we can input data. So it is designated for the main app. It uses the font font family. It has a text color 000, foreground color of white, with a border width of 2 and a width of 180. It means this is 180 pixels long, and this is its placement. And that is the same for every label and entry box that we have here. The only difference that we have here is the options for the gender. If you check here in the gender, it cannot be typed, it cannot be deleted. You can only choose. This is because in the gender, it is not an entry box. It uses a combo box, which is the drop down that we have. And the difference that it has is it has a pre-selected options, which is male and female, and as you can see here, it has a width of 180, and the variable that it has is the gender var, and the value for the gender var is string var, which means it's a string variable. And then the values that it has is equal to the options, and options is equal to male and female. And as you can see here, it has a state of read only. This means that it cannot be edited unless you choose from the choices or the options that we have in the drop-down window, which is male and female. And then the gender options that's set here is set to male. So if you add a new entry, set female, and add a new entry, it reverts back to male because that is set to male and its placement. Next, we have the buttons. So each button here have text in them and have commands in them. So for example, this add button, it is designated to the main app. So as you can see, we use the CTK button here, and then we have the command insert. The command insert is what we have up here, the insert function. So the command for the add button is the insert function. So if we click the add button, it executes the insert function, and if the insert function is run, the insert EMR function in the FB database is run. So it is all connected, and that is all the same for each button here: the add button, clear button, update button, delete button, new window button, and this is for the tree view that we have. So the add button is the insert function, clear view the clear function, update the update function, delete the delete function. The new window button, on the other hand, is what connects the main window into the main info window, which we'll touch later. So let's move to the tree view or the tree frame. So the tree view is this box where the data is seen and selected. So the CTK frame, we use CTK frame, and it is designated to the main app, and it has a width of 1000 pixels and a height of 400 pixels. So as you can see, it's a rectangle. And then a foreground color of white, background color of white, corner radius of 5. Next we have the style. It uses the main app still, and it is the signature for the main app. It follows the style of the main app, and it uses the theme of class. So these themes are already pre-existing in the custom Tkinter library. This is just one of the themes that we have. And then we configure the style. The foreground, it uses the font2 function, and the foreground is white. Give you that heading. And then this is for the tree view itself. It uses the font of Arial and 13, the row height of 30, foreground of black, and background of white. And this is the text inside the tree view. This tree.column commands sets the columns, or sets the rules for the columns. So as you can see, for the ID column, the anchor.tk anchor is equal to tk.center. This means that the data from each column is centered. As you can see, it is centered. Every data that you have under each column is centered. Even if we adjust this, it follows the center, as you can see. And each column has its width sizes. So even though it has its own width sizes, it can still be adjusted. If we don't want for this to be adjusted, we use the min width command that sets it to permanent width, width, and then we have the tree.heading commands here. These are basically what we see in the headings here. So for the ID column, we have text of ID, name, role, gender, marital status into civil status. As you can see, it is not the same. Here we have marital status, here we have the civil status. But even so, the data taken from the marital status entry box is placed into the civil status column. And age, DOB, date of birth, home address, email. And the dent of tree is back to the left. And these are for the scroll bar. This is for the scroll bar, which we see here. And then that's it for the main window. So we have the medical info window. So let's move on to the medical info window. So if we click the access medical information, we are brought to the medical information window. This is because of the new window button that we have here. It runs the medical info, or it opens the medical info. And then for the medical info, it's just the same as the main window, as it follows it. Sorry for that. It has its own configurations. Instead of electronic management system, you have the medical information, and then it has dimensions. It has dimensions of 1180 and 700, or 1180 by 700. This axis, X and Y axis. It has a background color of this text code, and it is still not resizable, and then same font family. Why did I put this two here, even though up here it's already called or it's already assigned as a global variable? This is because for some reason, even though those are already called for are already assigned as global variable, I can still run it. And I had to change this from main app to into med info because it's a new window. And then if you read here, we have just changed, or we still follow just the same as the main window. We have the add to tree view function, but instead of FB database, we follow the FB med info database. In the FB med info database, it still does the same as the FB database. However, in the FB window database, it only has essentially 7 data or 7 columns: the patient ID, the attending, diagnosis, p-type, history, and allergies, which can be seen here. Patient ID, date of birth, visit, attending physician, diagnosis, blood type, medical history, and allergies, and has 7 columns. For the fetch med info, it still does the same as earlier. It fetches the data from, instead of EMR this time, we take it from the med database, and then from the med table, which is this table and this database. Next, we have the insert med info. From the name itself, we use this function to insert data from the GUI or the main from the Windows application from the entry boxes into the database. However, unlike the insert function in the FB database, in here, the medinfo database, it does not need for all the entry boxes to have data in them. This is because we use the if-else statement. As you can see here, we have, for example, in the first line, date of first visit if date of first visit, else none. This just means that if there is data for the date of first visit, that data is still inputted into the date of first visit. However, if there is no data in the entry boxes, no data returned, it would instead give a value of none. And that is just the same for every data that we have in the table. If there is no value, it returns the none value. However, if there is value in the entry boxes, the data taken from the entry boxes is substituted into these placeholders and then placed into the or inserted into the med table in the med database. So as you can see here, it uses insert into med, which is our table, and then the values. Next we have the delete, update, and ID exists, and it's just the same as earlier. Deletes, it updates, and it checks if the ID already exists. So here, use this add to tree view to take the data from the table or from the database, from the table, and then present it into the tree view or the frame that we have here. And then the clear function, if we click the new entry, the entry boxes are cleared. Next we have the display data function. This function, just the same as earlier, it takes the data from the table or from the display data function takes the data from the tree view and is inserted into the entry boxes that we have here. So as you can see, if we select the data from the tree view, the data is changed. And then we have the delete function, it deletes, the update function, it updates, and then the insert function, which inserts. As a demonstration of earlier, which I said even though there is no data in the entry box, the value would be none. So for example, I create a new ID, so it's 145, and then a different name of nom, identification of Ben, Ben, and then we have no diagnosis yet, no blood type yet, no medical history yet, no allergies yet. The patient doesn't know his allergies, medical history, his blood type, his diagnosis, for example, and then we add data. As you can see, even though there is no data from these entry boxes, the data is still inserted. Instead, it returns a value of none. As we have seen earlier, if there is no data taken from the entry boxes, it would return a value of none. So let's move into this. Just the same as earlier, these codes are responsible for what we see in the window. We had the label for the date of first visit, its entry box, the label for the attending physician and its entry box, the label for the diagnosis and its entry box, the blood type and the entry for the blood type entry box, the medical history label and its entry box, the allergies label in its entry box, and then we have the add button, clear button, update button, delete button, and we have here the codes for our tree view. Instead of main app, it uses medinfo, and this time it only has a width of 900 and 400, still a foreground of black and a background of black. Still uses the clam theme just to make it uniform for the entirety of the Windows application, and instead of 12 it uses 30, Arial 30. And then instead of ID, or instead of the data that we have seen in the main window, we have the data from the medinfo database. So we have patient ID, date of first visit, attending physician, blood type, diagnosis, medical history, allergies, and still the data under for each. The data under each column is still centered because we have set it to TK center, and each column has its own different width. And then for the name of each heading, and the tree is packed into the left. The scroll bar does still have the scroll bar here, and then the attribute review function still does the same. However, we have a new function here, which is the def close new window function, and under it is medinfo.destroy. This function is used for the close button that we have here, this blue one. This close button, essentially, if clicked, it closes the medinfo window. As you can see here, the command is close new window, and under close new window, it runs this code medinfo.destroy. So it destroys or it closes this window. So it's close, it will run it, close, closes, closes. So the last thoughts or last explanation for this Windows application. I admit that we could have done more for this Windows application. If I think some of you already thought that maybe we could have just connected the table or connected the database from the main window with the medical information window. That way we would not have to make different IDs or different entries at the same time, and instead the data would be connected for each patient. However, I ran into some problems in doing that, and I already consulted some of my friends and still could not do it. Even ChatGPT cannot explain it to me how is it like that. And so I just made two different databases for the Windows. So that's all for this Windows application explanation. So I hope you learned something from this and see you soon. And thank you for watching.